All right. I am now joined by returning champ, Ben Udashen from the Red Diaper Baby podcast. Right.
Hello.
I am now joined. All right. I'm getting a weird echo. I wonder what's going on there.
Not me.
That was me. I had YouTube on.
I knew it was you, Jeff. I knew it.
I turned it off.
All right. I'm now joined only by Ben Udashen.
Yes.
So, now I'm also joined for his GTAA debut by Jeff. I've talked to you a million times. Did you say that Barrois? Man, you're in New Orleans. So, yeah. Very good. From host of Good Morning Comrade down there, as we said, in Louisiana. How you guys doing today?
Great.
I'm fantastic.
Two of my favorite Bens.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. That's very nice. And it's my favorite Jeff.
Yeah, I really don't even know what the competition would be.
I have a cousin-in-law named Jeff. He's pretty cool, but
better than Jeff Bezos, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. I hope he never comes back,
Like just head and shoulders.
Yeah. Can't wait. I love that he's going to space with his brother. That is some pretty cool energy, Like, I don't have a brother. I want to go to space with my sister. So, maybe I'm not as evil, but, he's got a real special relationship.
If you go to space, I won't be sad if you come back, though. You know what I mean?
That's true.
I think I saw on change.org there are like several different versions circulating of a petition to deny him re-entry to Earth.
Yes. Where's Space Force when you need them?
I saw a meme that we wish Jeff Bezos a very happy burn up on re-entry, like with the Bugs Bunny meme, which was hilarious.
I mean, I have to admit, I would not do that.
You wouldn't go to space?
I wouldn't go to space now. Maybe if it's a little more tested for commercial, like how many commercial space flights have there been?
Yeah, I guess my sort of take on the thing, and this maybe could get us into the libertarian kind of conversation. But when you have never ever been told no and nothing has ever happened to you, you begin to think that you're invincible and nothing could ever go wrong and take you down. So maybe that's what he's banking on. That could never happen to me. I'm the main character on Earth. Right?
Yeah, but
nothing bad can happen.
But Jeff, you're telling me that getting your phone hacked by Saudi and intelligence, getting a divorce means nothing bad has ever happened to you? Nothing. I mean,
he cares about.
That's true. Actually,
nothing that he actually feels in any meaningful way,
which shows he really did not care about his marriage. But
right.
The most viral tweet I ever had before I deactivated my Twitter account for more than 30 days, which then meant it was deleted, which was not smart. Was that when they got divorced? I'm just rereading my old tweets, guys. Was that when they got divorced, I just was wondering who got the Seattle City Council in the divorce. It was hard to tell. I don't think any of them got Shama, but the other ones, it's a little questionable.
No, that's a good question. Which, of course, in principle, the nice thing about something like the Seattle City Council, U.S. Congress, or whatever, is that these things are supposed to be accountable to everyone under anarcho-capitalism, the ideology that's stated by one of the participants in the debate that we're going to watch. That would no longer be the case, right? You no longer have decision-making bodies that were, in principle, supposedly to a certain extent accountable to everybody, which obviously is true only in a very imperfect way right now. But man, the one thing that's worse than having a legal fiction of something important is not having it. Just not having it at all, right? Having there are lots of racial disparities and poverty and police violence and other things in the United States today. And that's pretty bad. But, what would be worse would just like reinstating Jim Crow. That would be worse. And I think that similarly, you could say that that having a bunch of legal institutions that are theoretically, divorced from the power of economic oligarchs, but not actually nearly as divorced as we might like, would still be a lot better than just not having that at all, right? So I know Walter Block, for example, who is also debated Sam Seder in a much longer one that we're going to watch today. Actually, much longer too. We're going to watch today. Walter Block did too. I've also talked to him. We'll say
nice guy, right? Really nice.
From Loyola. He was from Loyola in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. A fun fact about Walter Block, by the way.
Or the Tulane.
He ended up at Loyola, I guess, but he's from, grew up in New York, and went to high school with one Bernard Sanders.
Oh my God. So he, Norman Finkelstein and Chuck Schumer and Bernie were like all in the same class. That is like the loudest group of people I've ever imagined. Now, Jeff, you can't comment on this, but our people, very loud.
I just want to know who's the jock, who's the nerd, and who's the
Bernie's the jock. Bernie's the jock, actually. He was
weirdly enough, yeah.
Yeah, he's the jock. He loved basketball and track.
Yeah. Right.
Do you remember the campaign when he was hitting them threes?
Yeah, he was dunking on his grandkids.
Yeah, exactly. So, which I've always thought, like, this is part of what makes such a horrible missed opportunity, because because like it would have been the perfect, like 2020 would have been the perfect year for Bernie, because once he got through the Democratic primary, the age thing would be a complete non-issue. Right. So it's like, okay, Trump was about the same age, and come on, right? I mean, watch Bernie play basketball. Try to imagine Trump playing basketball. There you go.
Yeah, Trump doesn't even drink like water, right? Like, no. Like I've been taking care of a 3-year-old in between jobs, and I really do feel like Trump has the same like appetite and like discipline as a 3-year-old, where just constantly going between things. He needs to get a little squeezy pack.
Certainly the same taste in food.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Walter Block, for example, I know has said that you'd still have court system under anarcho-capitalism, which is confusing because anarcho, no states. What does that mean? Well, you'll have private courts, and you say, well, how do you? So if something's a private court, right? I mean, it doesn't impose. It's like, well, you could fight, or you can agree on a court to adjudicate your dispute. And they believe that there'd be all these incentives for people to take the second option, about which I just have to say, I've watched a lot of Sopranos episodes where like people ping pong between these two options, like you can have a sit down or you can fight, and it seems like the existence of the sit down option doesn't mean that the fighting option doesn't happen.
Right.
No.
Yeah, it's not this or that. I will say this though, it does seem like we've already moved in the direction of the private courts with all this with this like third party arbitration and that sort of come along with like terms of service for contracts or for jobs even, that has sort of like become the private courts that exist in the world that have essentially preempt the actual judicial system that we have in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Alan Kennedy, thank you so much for the super chat, brothers. Says, if this is the Breakfast Club, Walter Block is Bender, Bernie is Emilio Estevez, and Schumer is Michael Hall.
Yes.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I've got to say, by the way, to tie the two subjects together, if those Elon Musk Mars colonies ever end up happening, that's you've got your anarcho-capitalism, right? I mean, that's like a company town, except for it's literally impossible to leave.
Yeah, a company planet. Oh, no, thank you.
Oh Lord!
All the music is Grimes. Oh. I already lived in the
hipster
part of town in 2011. I'm done with that. Okay, I'm done. No more.
Sounds like Seattle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the same area as the Chaz, but yes, yeah. No, there's there is an interesting parallel with I just discovered this thing randomly. I'm sure we got to get to the clip, but there was this great moment when the Chaz and Chop had started here, and apparently someone did a spoof on Fox News, not on Fox News, but they spoofed Fox News by like doing like a post on Reddit where they just laid out all of the like, the like lines in Monty Python's Holy Grail, where it's the peasant. He talks about how, we live in an anarcho-syndicalist commune and all that. And they just laid it out and they were like, oh my God, this is what they're doing. It's like, man, I wish they were doing that there. That would have been way more organized. That would have been great. Sorry, but that's sort of a more like left anarchism, and what we're talking about today is I don't know any anarchists who think anarcho-capitalism is even anarchism, like not even in the same way that like there are like like harder left like socialist or communist who say like social democracy is not real socialism, like not even that. So I'm fascinated on why they've taken the term anarcho.
Yeah, it sounds like something that only like Stefan Molyneux has like called himself ever, and then basically that's been broadly seemingly broadly applied. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that I think like people on a sort of street level who call themselves anarchists are invariably not. But there is this sort of subset of like often very online, or you have kind of there's a sort of like intellectual weirdo who in the United States who calls themselves an anarcho capitalist, and in the debate which we'll be watching, much shorter than we usually watch, but I wanted to just do something after the last couple. I wanted to do something light and fun, and that would definitely be a one-off, so we didn't have to do a part two. So we got next week going to have Matt McManus and Comrade Hamilton on and we're going to do the Žižek Hannon debate. By the way, speaking of Žižek, Charles Raintree, thank you for the super chat, says Chomsky versus Žižek, who wins?
We know. I know, personally.
Well, I guess that's Ben's answer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say,
Love
Jeff?
Chomsky. He's just in a debate, it's about who's more entertaining, and there's no question. Sorry,
that's the Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather of our time.
And yes, Žižek is Logan Paul, and that's why I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I mean, that kind of reminds me of that. What was that TV show from like 10 years ago where they would do these hypothetical matchups? Like, what if the Vikings fought the IRA or whatever?
The Greatest Warrior. Where they
would exactly.
Yeah. It's like sort of bizarre on that level because Žižek and Chomsky just sort of seem like they're in different categories.
Yeah,
right.
Basically, just people on Spike TV just like blowing a bunch of stuff up. That's basically what it was. Like it gave like an opportunity for somebody to like recreate like a fucking pike for if they're like in a phalanx and Alexander the Great army, and they could just like stab a side of beef with it.
Yeah.
Who wins? The audience. Good comment, Silver Harlow. Good comment. Well, I don't know. I'm just gonna say this. I don't like Chomsky's probably more right in a lot of things. Not right, but like he's like very analytical. I'm sure that's probably the wrong term to say with Mr. Philosophy guy here. I just realized I said a very loaded word. But like, Žižek again he'll like make some old Soviet joke and it'll just kill,
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely more entertained by Žižek, no question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, I remember, God, like 9 years ago or something, there was some back and forth because somebody asked Chomsky about Žižek, and he made some very negative comments, but like the kind of negative comments he made, again, sort of go to the different category thing, because they were like, well, I mean, what they amounted to is that Chomsky thinks that like Lacanian psychoanalysis and continental philosophy are kind of bullshit. And it's like, okay, I mean, I'm not sure how much else there is to say after that. There was some like sniping back and forth, but like that just sort of seems like, I don't know. I mean, and I know there was and then God, 2 years ago or something, Current Affairs ran an anti-Žižek piece, which then like Žižek apparently said something about how, well, it's because like Nathan Robinson loves Chomsky and this is Chomsky's revenge, for the honest sniping back and forth. So Current Affairs had its masthead for a while, Chomsky's revenge.
Yeah, I remember that.
All of which is kind of funny, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think that to actually, yes, Chomsky's style of reasoning is much more my speed. I don't know. I think Žižek, beyond being an extremely entertaining person, which is undeniable, I think the guy's got some real insights. Like I think that to actually have a conversation, you need to have that would have more than entertainment value. I think that you need to have like Chomsky sort of getting what Žižek was doing in a way that, like, I think he's just got too much of a, oh, this sounds like bullshit filter to do. So I think probably, that wouldn't be super productive.
And most importantly, Žižek mentioned you in his most recent piece. So didn't he?
He did, yeah. Yep. On like, I want to say, what is today? Sunday, day before yesterday. This came out as on RT. So yeah, he it was a good, even apart from that, I thought it was a good piece.
Sorry, did that sort of like that's now it's making it look like there's some weird payola going on.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about, right, Ben? It's just so people, you would be nicer to him online.
Yeah, my people in Slovenia paid off, Slavoj Žižek, or no, or is it that his people in mid-Michigan, paid me off? I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah, they're actually in Illinois. There's probably more Slovenians in the Chicago area, but yeah.
Little column B. Everybody's getting paid here. It works.
All right. Fair
Except
enough.
for me.
Except for us. That's right.
No. Yeah, it was a good article. Basically, we'll actually talk about a little bit on the show tomorrow, but he was going through the sort of controversies about cancel culture and certain kinds of performative wokeness, and also stuff about sort of bills like Republican state legislatures trying to censor, critical race theory, and he, I think he tied it together in a really interesting way. And there was also some like Lacanian psychoanalysis and stuff that I wouldn't claim to, have an opinion about one way or the other. But like in the main argument, I think he tied it together in an interesting way, and basically said like, okay, the distinction that we have to make is that the state legislature is trying to censor critical race theory. It's because, or what they imagine to be critical race theory or whatever, it's a, that's an attempt to shut down anything that questions, foundational national myths. And, and so the distinction you have to make is that the reason to criticize, like kind of canceling behavior of the left and, crazy excesses of wokeness and all that stuff is that not that the goals are bad, but just that that all that stuff actually has the effect of undermining the goals. Whereas, whereas in the case of like the Republican censors and all that, the goals are dog shit and should be opposed. That's not the way he put it, but that was roughly the gist of the article. So, I liked it. I would have liked it even if he hadn't shouted out the book, which is Canceling Comedians While the World Burns, critique of the contemporary left. Could buy from fine bookstores everywhere, but I would recommend the Worker Cooperative Bookstore in Baltimore, Red Emma's.
Book from Red Emma's, by the way, they had like a really nice note in there that the workers wrote. I don't know, it was like on an index card, and somebody like drew a little picture.
Very nice.
Yes. Well, with no further ado, let's start to watch the debate. So, picked this one just because again it's short and sweet, and it's also. When Sam was on the show, we went through a bunch of these, but this is not one we watched any of while he was on. We kind of referred to it, but it's one of my favorites just because it's a really compact one. But I think that seeing and of course this is the setting here is a version of the Majority Report that no longer exists because this was the Sam Seder, Michael Brooks, Jamie Peck Majority Report of whom Sam is the only remaining member since Michael passed, and Jamie is doing other things now, and I think that the way he interacts with the often very disruptive sort of interjections of the other two while still sort of, while doing his thing to a T with the anarcho-capitalist collar is just sort of perfect.
That version of the show is definitely like a family Seder of mine for sure. Everyone's interrupting.
Exactly. All right, let's start it up. Yeah, I mean, there's Matt Lick, but I mean, somebody points out in comments. Of course, Matt hasn't gone anywhere, but but Matt's much less interrupting. In fact, he usually
much more goyish.
Yeah, exactly. Matt just sort of goyishly hangs out in the background for most of the time, unless he sort of is called in or he has something in particular he wants to interject in the conversation.
He's respectful.
He's filling the role I'm filling tonight.
Shut up, Joe. I'm interrupting all the time.
This is Max. I'm calling.
Sorry, I should say you want to mute yourself while it's on, and then unmute yourself when you have something to say. So I'm trying to get myself to remember to do that, so there's no feedback.
This is Max. I'm calling in from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Max from Minneapolis, Minnesota. What's on your mind, Max?
Well, a lot of things right now, actually. I think I emailed you guys the other night. I said I was asking about whether or not you guys still did the whole debate, what was it, libertarian anarcho-capitalist thing.
Sure. So what do you got?
Whatever you got to throw at me. People have asked me why I'm an anarcho-capitalist, why I think this is a good ideology, why I like it so much.
Okay. Can I just say before you start, you cannot have both of our words at once. You have to choose one. Either you're going to take anarchist or libertarian from us, from the far left, I mean.
You can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can explain to us now. All right. So Okay, so why don't you explain to us what these are? What is a libertarian anarcho-capitalist?
Well, it's where somebody is allowed to have the freedom of the state to whatever means necessary, and someone can just basically do whatever they want in a organized boundary where they're not allowed to let anybody in or anybody out without any sort of regulation.
Okay, what's the who's going to organize these boundaries?
The hierarchical society.
And how is that hierarchical society that is stateless now? How is that going to work?
Well, it's capitalist. It's one of the few things carried over from a capitalist society.
So the one thing that so what you imagine is that basically.
So Sam immediately, and I've seen him do this in the past when he has had these kind of debates. I might have seen this one on the show. I used to watch a lot more Majority Report than But like the very first thing he goes to is the very fundamental: who is going to like organize any of this stuff? How is this going to happen? What are because you need in order to have any kind of boundaries for property or society or something, there needs to be an initial distribution or enclosure of that, right? If it's going to be privatized, who determines who gets what, right?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, one way that I think was kind of multitasking. I think this gets at your point is to think about the fact that, like, one of the most prominent, libertarians in the United States, Senator Rand Paul, famously actually came to blows with his neighbor over like a micro dispute about property lines.
Exactly. That is the most libertarian argument to get into is you're mowing the or you're not taking care of your lawn and it's fucking up my lawn, basically, right? And that is the most like aspect of like to me that sums up the problem of libertarianism in the fact of like when you have something that deals with both of you and both of you are incentivized to like have the other person do it, how are you supposed to deal with that? And like in this context, there probably was like a homeowners association or something, But this guy, he just, he could go to his court or he could go have a fight, and he decided to go have a fight. And honestly, that was the right decision.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but.
No, it's funny.
He won the fight, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was just
and then of course also funny. I mean, I'm not going to say this is necessarily consistent or whatever. My only claim is funny is that Senator Paul then went to Canada for medical treatment when he had said in the past that socialized healthcare means that doctors are enslaved. He said if you have a right to healthcare, that means that as a doctor you're saying you have a right to my services, which means that I'm a slave. But then apparently he doesn't have a big problem being worked on by slaves.
Right. Yeah, who knew? Maybe when there's a state telling you what to do, you're actually pretty good at your job, I guess is what he said. That's kind of a weird thing he's kind of setting himself up for there. I'm realizing, especially with his comments about the Civil Rights Act and stuff, like, yeah, he's not a good guy. Again, that's why I supported his neighbor.
Yeah. Which is a joke I remember Michael making on TMBS when we were talking about this. Like, I did the my typical lame thing, and it was like, look, I'm not saying that like I support beating up Rand Paul, and he was like, what, dude? What his neighbor did was awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. He is enacting libertarianism more so than Rand Paul ever was. Rand Paul, he's a senator, and he was like an ophthalmologist or something, like, come on, man. Like this dude probably is like a hardcore capitalist business owner, like, has Rand Paul like run like a business, Yeah,
right. He did start his own licensing board.
Now that's a business.
This is a true fact that he apparently, I mean, I think one reading of what's going on there might be so that he could get certified. But in any case, Dr. Rand Paul is certified by the Rand Paul founded certification board. Make of that what you will.
I take it back. That actually is the most libertarian thing. So he has been the most libertarian guy in that neighborhood. Okay,
That rule,
I take it back.
Kind of awesome. He found the workaround. He found the loophole. You got to respect it.
But yeah, I think Jeff's point is exactly right. That like property, like the word property is ambiguous, and certainly as these people use it, it's ambiguous. And they say like, "Oh, you can't take my property. I have a right to my property." Does that mean like the property that you legally have, or does it mean the property that you should have if everybody were following exactly the rules of your particular like your headcanon of how you think all this stuff should work, that because you mixed your labor with something and that gives you a right to this particular area and all of that? Because if it's the first thing, like that's in practice what people mean when they object to their property being taken away. But that means that like you have a piece of paper from the state entitling you to it. And if it's the second thing, then man, we're going to get a lot more of that, of that. Like we're going to get a lot more of what happened between Rand Paul and his neighbor, because like there is a hell of a lot of ambiguity. Like if you no longer have like various associations and boards and courts and all that stuff, that's just like what's imposed by society, but like you get to pick your own or whatever. Like, okay, I staked my claim to this piece of property because I mixed my labor with it or something. So how much does that extend to? Like, does it literally like the inches where you planted seeds, or what does that mean? And if we don't have a state to adjudicate these things,
your line of property ends where you stop cutting the grass.
Pretty much. But what if it's like those like that like little area between the sidewalk and the road, and it's like between the two houses? You have no idea.
I mean, if you pressure wash that little section, then it's yours.
But what if you pressure wash it too much and you ruin it? It's the whole problem. I could go on this forever.
Well, I was just going to say before we go back to the debate, because we're talking about Rand Paul. I have to mention something that I read 11 years ago, but I still think of every time his name comes up, which is he's got so the late Alexander Cockburn has had an article in Counterpunch about the infamous appearance of Rand Paul when he was first running for Senate on the Rachel Maddow show, which I think was Jeff maybe referred to earlier, where he said that he would have voted against the Civil Rights Act because there are provisions that tell private business owners what to do with their property, which awesome, right? And I think tells you everything you need to know about the relationship between libertarianism and freedom, right there. Freedom in the sense that we should actually care about.
Racist.
Yeah. But there's just this line where Coburn says, libertarians in the dust and heat of the political arena have no grasp of scale or priority. At the heart, many of them are nutty, martyrs to their truths, like 4th century Christian schismatics. Ardent to refute charges that they favor the untraveled sway of the market, the rejection of all federal intrusion, they dash to von Mises and kindred heroes with all the childhood enthusiasm of Gabriel Betteridge invoking Robinson Crusoe in the Moonstone. They have no sense of timing. Rand Paul, after 5 minutes of jabbing from Maddow, could have easily swerved the conversation towards issues more congenial to the MSNBC audience than his theoretical take on the Civil Rights Act. He could have denounced the farce of financial, quote, reform, unquote, of Bush's and Obama's wars, of constitutional abuses. Those are all libertarian positions. But no, he couldn't stop himself shoving his foot in his mouth. He seems dumb.
Yeah, so
Correct.
exactly right. No, that is to even put that in like more like straightforward, direct, distilled terms. Like libertarians are like single thought babies, right? And the only thing that they care about is shit that affects them, like whether it makes them happy in 1 minute or sad in 1 minute. And if it's all of the Van Mises and all this other shit is just post hoc justification. They're just making up. They're just making up like an intellectual sort of veneer for their fucking like complete and utter fucking baby appetite.
There's definitely a graph that me and Jeff should make working with kids about the different ideologies that fit the different developmental stages. And libertarians are definitely like 3 months olds, you know? I am kind a little bit to babies.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the most intense libertarians do definitely fall into what Jeff is saying. I will say, maybe along the lines of developmental stages, there are people who are salvageable or who are not okay, who go through that phase. That there are people who, by 2016 they had emerged into like being like Bernie supporters or whoever, who had supported Rand's daddy in his previous run for president, because from a certain perspective, you think, look, if especially back when economic issues were much less on the table, then if you're focusing in on the legal weed and don't murder people with drones and all that stuff, there are things that sound congenial to somebody with good instincts, and it sounds very internally consistent. And if you're a certain kind of nerd, that appeals to you. And so I totally get all of that. Now, that said, I think Alexander Coburn is 110% correct about Rand Paul, and just that, like, that whole paragraph is so nicely put together. And yeah, just that last line, I always think of Alex Coburn on Rand Paul. He seems dumb.
Yeah, that's about right.
And one last point on the babies thing, that it's almost hopeful because babies can grow, and so can libertarians. They can get better.
Yeah, but they never get cuter. They never get cuter than that.
Yeah. All right, let's watch some more.
Our leaders will be the richest people in the country, and they will organize things for us.
That's what capitalism is. Anarchy, wherein people are allowed to buy whatever they want at whatever asking price they are asking for. It's basically a haggling system, as you can have in, say, the diasporas or the cities in Israel. When I went there, it was you would say, I want
in the shuk. In the shuk.
Yes, like that. The markets, the bazaars. When you would go there, you could ask. They would ask 500 shekels for a soccer jersey, and you could say, well, I want to pay 350, and you could start haggling from there. You could say, well, you could say 475 for like 450.
No, I understand. I understand how haggling works. No, so wait a second. So in the society you imagine, Max, what
that's exhausting.
The richest person, right? Let's say, because as we transition into your version of the society, right? Like the capitalists who have all the money, they're going to be the ones who organize everything, correct? As you said, they're going to be the organizers, because this is the hierarchical society that you're talking about. What if they say, like, hey guys, I have $1 billion. Guess what? I just bought the shuk, and all you little guys, bye-bye. And now Max goes in to bargain with this one owner, and he says, I want that soccer jersey. And the guy says, 500 shekels. And Max says, I want to pay 300 shekels. And the guy says, all right, goodbye. Good luck buying it somewhere else, because we've cornered the whole thing.
Well, then I could just buy it somewhere else. It's not.
Max, I just said they've bought it all up. They've bought out every other little stall that's there. Those little tiny stalls, they couldn't compete with this billionaire. So where do you get the shirt now, Max?
You buy it anywhere else, I guess.
You just bought all the stuff.
stores.
So
He's
where are
got
you
a
going to buy it
monopoly.
from? Somewhere else, I guess.
Max?
Hmm?
You still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So, dude, what do you do?
I'm just listening to the people in the background. What's up?
Well, those guys.
You have a wonderful
those-
day, bro, and I'll see you again soon.
No.
Is he was
forgive
being
Michael,
coached, right?
please. He is rude.
Is he
He's
being
rude.
coached by people?
I got
but-
something
but
in my
I
eye. It has
guess-
nothing to do with this. I'm
listen.
not listening. Believe me.
What I'm
Oh my God, that makes me sad, but also I love this so much.
Yeah.
Not very libertarian of him to not stand on his own 2 feet, you know?
Yeah. I mean, he could have said, "Well, I'll just make my own shirt."
Yeah. That's
He could have said it. He could have said, "I'll just hire some slaves," because obviously that's gonna happen in an anarcho-capitalist society. I hope he seems like he'd be okay with that. But sorry, I'm putting words in his mouth. But it's amazing this happens a lot in these libertarian debates where they're just like, yeah, but I'll just do another thing. Like it's this magical thinking that just happens over and over and over again. And then you think about how many times, you're asking for like basic social democracy, and they're like, well, where are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? But then like this stuff kind of just is like, can just sort of exist in ether and is just like, whatever, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Unlimited
Yeah.
bounties for the individual and scarce bounties for any kind of social broad scale project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it also, I mean, like some of it just reminds me of like students in intro to philosophy classes when you'd probably be like, okay, so if you believe that murder is universally wrong, what if there's if that line is universally wrong, right? What happens when the murderer comes to the door asking where his victim is, and they'll be like, well, I'll make sure somehow that they're out of the house before I answer, or say, okay, so there are 5 people in this track, and then one person, the other is like, well, I would get them off the track somehow. It's like, no, you're just not getting the premise of the question,
Right.
Like you're just saying, I don't want to think about that. Like, yeah, what, like, I mean, and he could just, I mean, in like a better version of Matt, I think the anarcho-capitalist caller said he was. Could have at least said, well, I don't think that would happen. And then they could have argued about that. But like literally Sam said, okay, all the shooks have been bought up, right? Like, where are you going to get it? It's like, oh, somewhere else.
I'm just going to go to Jordan.
You're right.
Exactly. Which, yeah, I mean, just the idea that it's just inconceivable that markets could arrange for it to be the case, that people had like very limited options about where they could buy something. That's this crazy thought experiment that that Mac can't begin to wrap his mind around.
Too much.
I mean, if anything like that had ever really happened, that would be one thing. But as we all know,
there's never been a monopoly.
Yeah, if any market was hypothetically cornered by one particular power, of capital, by one particular sort of like powerful capital entity, I suppose.
I don't even see how that's possible, Jeff. Yeah. There's so many corners.
Yeah, about that. It's like an octagon.
Octagon. It's a nonagon at least.
Yeah. Also, love to see what the anarcho-capitalist version of the UFC would look like, but I think I've got an idea.
Yeah.
UFC.
Axes.
Yeah.
Max, I'm asking you, what do you
Max,
do now?
sorry.
Well, then, well, I can. Well, one, I could either revolt. I could shut down his market. I could try.
How are you
going to
shut down his market? He's got $1 billion. You got what? $150? You got the 300 shekels?
Throw it. That's the beauty of an anarchistic society. I could throw it over.
Stop using our word that's not your word.
Wait a second. How would you throw over that?
Oh my. What do you mean? Oh my God. Anarchistic is
with
not
my hands.
You're saying hold on. You're claiming anarchy as a word.
No. All right, listen, don't get distracted by that. Don't get distracted.
No. You can't just claim a word like that. This isn't like.
You're right.
Politics.
You're right. She cannot.
Economic.
I agree. Now let's get back to the scenario we were talking about. Let's say, like, how would you overthrow, let's say, Bloomberg News
in the background so far?
Just assassinate the guy.
Oh, okay. I understand that. I understand what you're saying now. So this is going to lead in your anarcho-capitalist world. The way it's going to work is monopolies and then assassinations.
Yeah.
All right. Cool world, man. Do we get jetpacks?
No.
I didn't think so. All right, buddy. I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Such appropriation. It's really triggering for me. All right. Remember, folks, and caps or whatever you want to call yourselves. It's a culture, not a costume.
This is not beanbag.
Anarchists oppose hierarchy. The more you know.
Stop it. Knock it off.
Jamie seems genuine.
I listen.
By the way, no, to be fair, can I just say most legit answer to that question I've ever heard.
Right.
I mean, everybody else is just like, I'd ask them, they want to beat. We could have a free exchange of ideas. Assassinate them. Okay.
I will say,
not what I want, but that was by far the
also,
most intelligent answer I've heard to that question.
And that's why I had to basically wrap up the conversation, because I really don't have a response to someone who is suggesting we can develop a political system that would be based on monopolies that would be dealt with by assassination. I mean, that is, I can't really argue.
You're cornered.
Right.
You're cornered.
It's like agree to disagree on what kind of world you want.
Exactly. If we're not
500 shekels, eh? Watch your back at the souk.
Oh, shoot. It's hard to argue when you can't agree on the basic terms.
Less concerned about the direction of that conversation, it would have been really like, how do you go about organizing the assassinations when all of the private death squads are owned by the same billionaires?
Well, I'll tell you how you do that.
How do you get to the assassinations when there are no roads?
Nice.
That's how you do it. You get Bourne to do it.
Wait, so then Jason Bourne is operating as some type of like social service worker for people that aren't billionaires. That doesn't sound very capitalist.
Exactly. He is the one. That's the one thing you need is the pro bono social services top assassin spy.
So then they can see, like, I will concede, even though I'm a libertarian, we need a government provision for one thing, which is a Jason Bourne style assassination
squad. Sort of like the Jedi, but not so futuristic.
It sounds lit.
That's actually pretty awesome, dude. That was the best libertarian call I've ever had. Respect.
That was it. I mean, there you go.
Can I just say that, like, that was like the perfect, like, I didn't see when they cut to Michael and he was just like wearing the tracksuit with the chain and he's like doing his like whole thing. It's just like, that
he's
is
in the costume, you know, he's pure Michael.
That was
moment.
Like Michael at his zenith. Like
yeah.
No, yes, everything about that is perfect. And, you know, this kind of goes back to the conversation that we were having, you know, a few minutes ago about, you know, libertarians and, you know, outgrowing it and all that stuff, since like most of what I try to do with anti-libertarian stuff is to engage with the kind of libertarian who maybe has some of those good impulses that we talked about earlier, and is a kind of, I say with respect, these are my people, right? Like a little bit of a strange pedantic nerd, who is like once they kind of talk themselves into it, because these initial intuitions, they're not quite sure how to see their way out of it, and the hope is that like really getting into the weeds with them can help them see their way out of it, which I think there's some when I did the debate with Gene Epstein in Florida, whenever that was, a couple months ago, like there's somebody who came up to me after, who said they were that they used to be they used to be a libertarian, and they'd started reading me a Jacobin, and whatever, and they were like the vice chair or something of Orlando DSA now, which like, again, that's the kind of libertarian, that's the kind of person who at least I know how to, like, whatever else other skills I might or might not have, I can talk to that guy, the libertarian who's hate reading Jacobin, like I know who that guy is. I can communicate with him.
It's so funny to me. I guess it's just the world that I live in, but like I can imagine people hate reading Jacobin, but I can't imagine a libertarian doing that. But mainly just because like I feel like they're just too focused on like, I don't know, like changing age of consent laws, or I don't know. Sorry, that's like the only libertarian topic.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though, right?
That's
so
another
that's one
thing.
kind of libertarian,
right?
There's another kind of libertarian that I think Jeff was describing perfectly earlier, and that's the kind who's like, a little weirdly hung up on stuff like age of consent laws, might be like disconcertingly prone to using rape analogies when arguing about economics.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Edgelords.
What's that?
Yeah.
Edgelords.
Yeah. You're sort of libertarian edgelord, who it's like this. The reason that they're libertarians is that this is a philosophy that tells them like exactly what they want to hear about the world around them and their relationship to it, and that's the
right.
And I think there are some gray areas and edge cases between the edgelords and the more salvageable kind. But the guy Max from Minneapolis, the anarcho-capitalist scholar,
respect Max.
It's like a sort of like is a kind of like I mean, I think Max is probably a sociopath, but he's also like a kind of an awesome sociopath. Like he's definitely in the second category, but there's no clever argument that he's ever going to read like me making a Jacobin or Nathan making a current affairs or whatever that's going to make him think, maybe I got all this libertarianism stuff wrong.
For him, the whole, what is it, the Ayn Rand thing, A equals A or whatever, like the A in that is assassination, like that's what it comes down to.
And also like this guy, this little weenie calling from Minneapolis ain't assassinating anybody. If he got and he couldn't buy his freaking jersey somewhere he wanted to, he'd probably go like cry about it to his, whoever he could find that'll listen to him, but like he's not, there's 0% chance, because if that was the case, then he would actually understand that we do live in a system that does have like oppression that is reinforced by the government, but it's not because like the government is necessarily I'm about to say it wrong. It's not like there's a direct oppression by the government that makes the status of, essentially the economic distribution the way it is. The economic distribution informs the government and constructs the government that we have. And like, that's the thing that these fucking people don't get, right?
Yeah, right. That it's not the existence of some sort of government or another. It's that in the society that we actually live in, the kind of state institutions that we have, are constructed at every level to serve the interests of capital.
With the balance of powers that exists in the world, and right now in America specifically, and most of the world, labor is weak, capital is strong, capital runs the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And but even at that, even with those kind of state institutions that grew up within and exist to prop up, capital, there are, I mean, it is possible. Even to the, like on the one hand, the state is, like there's that, what's Lenin, says that, government is the executive committee of the ruling class.
Yeah.
But
I was going to bring up one of the few things I know about Lenin. So yeah.
Oh yeah. No.
There you go. No. That is just that idea. It's this thing that always bothers me about libertarianism and people who get so fixated on like the size of government as though like the state is singularly the thing that says it is like, the representative of the literal, like, federal government you're in, or the county, like the idea that like corporate power and things like that don't also interface with that is sort of a preposterous idea.
Right. No, exactly. Like, and it's, which actually, by the way, I'll relate it to that. I love Powell in the chat points out also, even with the sports jersey example, it was the last damn time anybody was able to haggle for the price for the piece of official sports merch.
Yeah.
What does OJ have to say about that?
yeah. Which is just a perfect point.
But the back of their, the trunk of their car, maybe you can do it. But if it's at an actual store, then no.
Yeah, you can do it if somebody's violating property rights.
But that's because of the state. Obviously, that's what's getting in the way of having to make every transaction be like Craigslist.
Yeah, although this is also, I think, kind of the point of like the David Graeber thing, the parable of the divided island, that you can't. I mean, you can't have extreme economic inequality. Like that's not going to last for very long. I mean, I guess this is related to Graeber's points, not exactly it, but I mean, like I think thinking about that gets us there. Like you're not going to be able to have that without somebody, without some sort of very strong police or police-like presence to do things like enforce intellectual property laws, or just property laws if these jerseys, fell off the back of a truck, and stop, kick out squatters and stop people from just taking, things that they need. And that can be, even in the society that we live in right now. I mean, like this is one of the, reasons that I'm not wild about, like abolitionist, slogans about, things like, like police and prisons, because if, like you're not going to not have some sort of enforcement mechanism. You're going to have some kind of enforcement mechanism. Mm-hmm. What we're arguing about is what it's going to look like. And I think the problem with the kind of, police that exist right now that are, racist and violent and militaristic and all the rest of that stuff is that like the public at large has way too little, they have way too little public accountability. But like, we want to be real clear that like the solution is not, let's just not have some sort of publicly owned enforcement mechanism. And then like, we could just have Mad Max for poor people and like private police for rich people. Like that.
I don't know. I think Mad Max for poor people is anarcho-capitalism. So.
No, I mean, it is exactly anarcho-capitalism. But that's the thing. It's like, and it's like people will say, "Oh, we could have some like grassroots community, patrols that aren't like professionalized police forces." To which I would say, talk to Trayvon Martin's family about that. Like does everybody get these these grassroots community patrols like the upper middle class, gated community too. Ahmaud Arbery, and then like if we're, and again, like, the sort of version that you'd inevitably have with rich people. I mean, just look at the, like like look at the history of like the robber baron era Pinkertons, you know, like you could have, there's absolutely like the reason, like right now we've got something a lot closer to a state monopoly on violent force. But when the rules of the road were a little bit different, I mean, those like private armies, brought in to break strikes and stuff were every bit as bad as the public version.
Oh yeah. And also it's not like we don't have a ton of veterans right now, just like after the Civil War, just itching to go.
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, like you could, you don't have to go all the way to some hypothetical anarcho-capitalist utopia. I mean, look at Brazil.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have those like kind of like right-wing paramilitaries, the people who murdered, Marielle Franco, who like, at this, like, who just, largely, veterans and, people like that. And at this point, like control massive amounts of territory in exactly the same way that a cartel would. Like that's certainly not my vision of how I would like how I would like whatever sort of public order is enforced to be enforced.
Also, the aesthetics of that like Mad Max anarcho-capitalist world don't really vibe with me. It's not really my thing.
As Grime would say, it's not a vibe.
It's too
it's really not a vibe.
There's too much dust flying around.
Oh God, I'm so sweaty already. It's like 90% humidity here today, and it's raining. So it's just like, it's awful. It's terrible. I can't even imagine that.
Jareed, thank you for the super chat. Says, have any of you read philosopher Elizabeth Anderson's Private Government? Very interesting internal critique of libertarianism. I haven't read the book. I've read some articles by Anderson. I've seen and heard some interviews. But the I think the core of the point, as I understand it, is just that like there's an awful lot that government does that private companies do, that the way that they relate to workers. I mean, like in some way it's a different way of formulating the point, but in some ways it's just like a very, very old socialist point, that in lots of, the way that they govern, their little domain, right? It's like a government, but it's certainly not like a democratic government.
Mm-hmm. So also, I'm sorry to like circle back.
Yeah, please.
Also on the like assassination question, like every libertarian that I know, like always talks about the first principle of like, like not the non-aggression principle, right?
Yeah.
NAP, baby.
Yeah, and like basically with this like when the libertarian that calls in like saying he's or an anarcho-capitalist calls in saying he's an anarcho-capitalist, and it's like, yeah, we'll just like fucking violate that number one principle of nonviolence. Like, okay, like literally, like, you checkmated me, I suppose, but you also did it by pulling like 3 queens from a different board. Like, okay,
yeah.
Which is also like a really crucial point because, I mean, really speaking of Mad Max, I mean, before you do that, I'm not the guy that's going to go around and say like, oh, look at you violating the NAP, but like, come on, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, this is the reason it's crucial is that like a super obvious objection to let's not have a centralized state is, do you think that means that we won't have any state? Or does it just mean that you're going to have like a Morton Joe setting up, their own little mini states that are going to be much less nice, than the centralized kind? And like a lot of this like anarcho-capitalist stuff, which, I mean, obviously, going back to one of the first things that Ben said, like, I think most, anarchists of the like, people who wear black at protests variety would say that that's not anarchism, because they're I mean, J.B. Peck kind of said this in the clip, because to them the sort of core anarchist objection to a state is an objection to hierarchy, so they'd also be against economic hierarchy, whereas of course the anarcho-capitalist, I don't know, I mean, I guess the core objection to the state is that it's funded through taxation and it violates property rights. But in like like when they describe this kind of, you know, anarcho-capitalist, you know, society that somehow, you know, doesn't have Immortan Joes popping up in it, it's like really the assumption is that like pretty much everybody is following the rules, that they're all like respecting the non-aggression principle, or if every now and again someone doesn't, you know, then there'll be like little enough of that can be dealt with, you know, by everybody else. But yeah, Max from Minneapolis is just saying, no, I fully plan to violate that as soon as the economic consequences of my system end up displeasing me.
Dunzo. That's all you need. This just means before we have that moment when it becomes anarcho-capitalism, make sure you got some guns. Get to stalking now, folks. I don't have space because rent is so high in my city, but that's another topic.
What if you raise enough capital, you can corner the prepper market too?
Finally. Yeah, exactly. Oh no, but now I'm gonna have to assassinate the leader of the prepper market. Ugh, it's exhausting.
And yeah, also, yeah, I mean, like I said, the clip makes me miss Michael very, very much, but also like that is just such a, I think what I was left with this clip is it's so like, it's such a perfect little distillation of Sam doing his thing. Cause the way that like the guy calls up and, you know, keeps control of his expression. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. You want to, you know, it's like, he's excited. He loves these calls. Right. You know, but it's like, you know, it's like, oh, what, you want to argue for anarcho? Yeah, sure. You know, what do you got? And then throughout it, like, and this is also a thing, like, despite coming out of comedy, like Sam's role was always in this version of Majority Report is very much to be the straight man.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to, we were talking about this when he was on the show, that like he has to keep, you know, say like he can't just like start cracking up, you know, in the middle of these things. And so on the one hand, you've got Jamie doing, you know, what she does. You know, you can't have our word. That's our word. And then the caller wants to argue with her, and Sam's like, no, I agree. You can have the word. Let's keep going, because it's just like laser focused on getting to the crucial point of the argument. And then Michael, of course, is Michael, so he's cracking up in the background, like he cannot contain himself. You're laughing at this guy, and so of course the guy wants to, you know, be offended by that and like change the subject to how offensive this is. And Sam's like, oh yeah, no, Michael shouldn't be laughing. That's bad. Okay, so I want to hear about this anarcho-capitalism.
Well, sort of like the core structure of the joke, right? Like of the, you know, these people being very frustrated by it, and then, but you know that Sam is just, he's very serious, and it's like, I will absolutely, like, I respect you as a human.
Exactly. And so he's gonna like just barrel through single-minded, you know, until he gets to the point of the argument where Max from Minneapolis says, how would I solve this problem? Okay, you tell assassinations? And then it's just like, oh yeah, cool world, dude.
Yeah.
Just
I like my booth monopolists who don't get assassinated, personally. Personally.
Well done.
It's just me. Sorry.
Yes. Anarcho-capitalist Trump, you know, there wouldn't be
exactly.
There wouldn't be elections, but you know, he's just giving his commentary, you know.
Exactly.
I like the ones who don't get assassinated.
Yeah, come on.
Because of course Trump in that world would just be mocking all of his rivals who were assassinated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All the other real estate magnates, you know, who got clipped.
Yeah. I have to say, this world sounds worse than feudalism, which was not good.
Yeah, but it like, some ways it takes so much.
It is feudalism, right?
Post-apocalyptic, honestly.
There is something that's very reminiscent of feudalism about it.
Yeah,
almost like it sounds like like those periods in Roman history where we'd have one general knocking off the emperor, and then
anybody who's ever listened to Mike Duncan's History of Rome podcast, the 20 episodes or whatever about the crisis of the 3rd century, when it was like
dudes whack on another left and right.
Yeah, exactly. It was like you'd have because he'd always do this thing at the end of the episodes where he'd be like, whatever, Galbinius, Marianicus, whatever, rule Rome from 70 AD to 70, whatever. Like those ones were all like 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 days,
exactly.
It's like, and it got into the point where you had, like, you basically, as emperor, you had to keep the whole army with you.
At least in feudalism, and at least in post-Constantinian Roman Empire, you had the church to keep everybody in line.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So at least it wasn't quite that bad. Yeah. And then, you keep as much of as much of the army as possible with you, so that you don't get somebody else who you can't keep your eye on, who has his own little power center. And then, so people are going to be attacking from one direction or another at the places that aren't defended. If by some miracle the local garrison actually does fend off the attackers, then immediately the soldiers will proclaim that general emperor and the whole thing will restart. So steal a line from Sam Seder, Cool World, which also makes it hilarious that fascists all think that ancient Rome is this model of an orderly society.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
Mike Duncan fan. I love it. I've listened to History of Rome 3 times, the whole thing.
Really? Oh man, I've only done it once.
Yeah, I've only done it
while
once.
playing Civilization 6, but yes, which shows that I've listened to it pretty recently. But
Mike's back in the States, I think.
Oh, nice.
Oh, is he? Okay. I have not finished. So I am. So I listened to. Yeah, I listened all the way through the History of Rome several years ago, and then I picked up Revolutions a couple of years ago, and I've listened to it on and off, but I'm nowhere near caught up. I'm in the Mexico season, so he was definitely in France at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give him a ring or something like that. I got to find out a way to get in touch with him because I'd love to talk with him.
Absolutely. So Jareed, follow-up super chat. Thank you very much for that. So Elizabeth Anderson says companies that libertarians love are the very Soviet communism they hate: central planning, obey orders, no freedom of speech. Yeah, I mean the central
People's Republic of Walmart.
Yeah, exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, that the central planning part is Lee Phillips and Mikhail Rozworski's point from People's Republic of Walmart that hey, look, this is these gigantic companies are big stretches of the economy in which internally there's no market in sight. It's central planning, which doesn't necessarily by itself tell you that we can plan everything, but I mean, it should tell you that libertarians are really overstating the case about how inefficient planning is.
Anarcho-authoritarians.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, also as Noam Chomsky likes to point out, internally they're totalitarian. Assert complete control over what you say to who, depending on what kind of job you have. I mean, there are many millions of people whose employers regulate, when they go to the bathroom, when they're smiling,
Oh, that's what I do with my nanny kids. You can't go to the bathroom right now. You can't pee outside. We got to go back. We got to get back.
Yeah. Well, and that's reasonable in that context. I'd like to think that we could have a world where in almost all contexts, adults can be trusted to make those decisions for themselves. But in any case, guys, this is a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Good to see you, Jeff.
So coming up to tomorrow, on the episode tomorrow, I'm going to talk about that Žižek article. We're going to talk about all of the ghouls going after Ilhan Omar for saying obviously correct things, which was, by the way, I was just looking at the other day, the first episode of TMBS that I was on in studio was the part of the title was Stand with Ilhan. So that was from the last round of this.
The very first fucking thing the Democrats did when she came in the office, when they took over in the House, was to censure Ilhan Omar. Like the very first thing. Like Democrats have been so horrible. I've been raging about this on GMC for the past like 3 days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's bad.
So we're going to play a preview of the conversation that I had, which is dropping for patrons on Thursday, with Kurt Hackbarth about AMLO's party, winning the midterm elections in Mexico, and and there's a part, it's a very it's a very messy and imperfect situation, which, by the way, guys, I hate to break it to you, if the left ever gets its shit together in this country and we're in a position to take state power, that will be also. We're not just going to have the version where we have all the good things and none of the bad things. That's also going to involve all kinds of weird compromises and shitty people having some power and etc.
I'm out then. I'm an anarcho-capitalist now, obviously. I'm out.
Yeah, but they have accomplished some pretty amazing things. They, raised the minimum wage in Mexico by 60%, which is still severely inadequate, but a lot better than it was. Created some public banks, put pensions like public pensions for seniors, which really hadn't existed, and that's actually in the Constitution now. They can't get rid of it. It's no longer the case that the DEA has carte blanche to basically do whatever they want in Mexico. So there are have been some pretty you're not going to get within the remaining 3 years of AMLO's term, if anybody thinks they're going to get workers control the means of production in Mexico with the 800-pound gorilla, literally the next country over, I've got bad news for you. But they have accomplished some real things, so we can talk about that. So play the preview for the patron conversation with Kurt Hackbarth about Mexico, and then related, Nicholas Allen, who wrote an article for Jacobin about the election in Peru, is going to be on to talk about that. And then the main guest at 9 is going to be Ryan Grimm, who has lots of interesting stuff to say. There's a clip of him that was, I think, actually trending a couple days ago, where he was telling a woman from the Federalist Society some apparently controversial, banal historical facts about how World War II ended. Which, I guess if the rule is that if it doesn't flatter the American collective ego, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was doing some critical race theory.
I was super mad at him, when he did that reporting about the union on the Sanders campaign, and I did a segment on GMC about it. And then, just the other day, I'd be okay, things are complicated, and Ryan Grimm's great now. One of those sorts of things.
Yeah. We could have a big discussion about that. I think that's a immediate version of that messiness that that we were talking about a minute ago, when stuff like this comes up in campaigns. But yeah. So this is somebody in the chat says there's no diversity on the panel. That's total nonsense. Jeff is a Gentile.
Yeah.
That's.
Shout out to Gory and to Christy for appreciating my braids, by the way. I like not even part Jewish. This is.
I'm bald.
I don't know how much further we could go in the direction of diversifying this panel, but no. So all kinds of good stuff coming up to tomorrow night on the show, and then on Wednesday, Forrest and Ryan and Cale Brooks from Jacobin and I are going to be talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey. So should be a good time. So we'll see everybody then. So thank you guys again. This is a lot of fun. Everybody should check out. There's Red Diaper Baby and Good Morning Comrade. And I appreciate these comrades very much. Left is best.